Hi, everyone, for your final day. Sorry, my cat is doing something if you hear that. So, the final day of this week, Friday, March 27th, 2020, our biology lesson. So, let me just share the screen so that we have that. Okay, so here we are. So, we are going to be working on the same standard today. So, HS LS3, 1. Again, it's still working with how traits are being passed down.
So our objective for today is construction. To be able to construct an explanation using visual representations or narratives as to how the chromosome is transmitted to the next generation via meiosis, how fertilization. So as always, there's my contact information, questions, comments, concerns.
Before we get into anything, I want to show us where we're going to be. So at the bottom of page 11 in your packets, we have 3 vocabulary words. 2 are going to be just reminders, and then 1 is a new word that I want to get us used to. So just make sure you're filling this out as we go through them. So meiosis is the process of creating these unique haploid, meaning they only have 1 copy of each DNA, so it's not a complete person, or it wouldn't be able to be viable on its own because it doesn't have all the DNA that it needs. So creating these unique haploid daughter cells that are used for sexual reproduction. Sorry, my cat just jumped on the keyboard. And then fertilization is the action or process of fertilizing an egg involving the fusion of the male and female gametes to form a zygote. So zygote's a new word that is the beginning of a human embryo. So it's like the first step. Once the male and female gametes, so the male and female sex cells form, and once the process of meiosis, the products of meiosis fuse with each other, so the sperm fertilizes the egg, and if they do it correctly and everything lines up correctly that they're able to fertilize, then they form a zygote. And then an allele, what we're going to be talking about today, is a variant form of a gene. So there are different alleles. So they just express, if we're talking about different forms of the same allele, they're expressing one is blonde versus one is brunette hair color. So they're the same gene that is expressing some trait, they're just expressing different forms of that same trait. So blue eyes versus brown eyes. Okay, so below where you just took your notes on the 3 vocabulary words that I wanted to make sure that we had down for today, now we are going to go over an example of a traits being passed down, because you guys are going to do this yourselves, and then you're going to create a narrative of traits being passed down for your independent practice today. So an example of traits being passed down, you guys are writing this down as I say it. So this is my example of traits being passed down to Ms. Fabrizio's. So my mom has blue eyes, and I have blue eyes. My dad has dark hair, and I have dark hair. So both my parents have passed down different alleles to me that were then expressed. So I don't have all of the alleles for my mom being expressed, and I don't have all of the alleles for my dad being expressed. Their cells both went through meiosis and then fertilization to create me. So I am a combination of their unique alleles. So I am not an exact copy of my mom, and I am not an exact copy of my dad. So I got different alleles from both of them. We'll talk more about how, like Punnett squares, and how these different alleles are expressed next week and beyond. But for right now, so just think about it as I'm getting different alleles from mom, different alleles from dad. When they came together in fertilization, that's how they passed it down to me. So I am a combination of that. So now you need, first pause the video, take a minute to write down what my example of these alleles are. So my example of traits being passed down. So pause the video now Welcome back. So now that you have my example of traits being passed down, on the top of page 12 of your packet, you are going to write an example of your traits being passed down. So pause the video now, think of an example of traits being passed down. So it can be an example from your parents that you see in you, somebody that you see on TV, so how Will Smith's kids look like him and Jada, so how those traits are being passed down. So write an example of that, and then make sure that you're including the meiosis, fertilization, and alleles in that. So use my example. You can rewind the video and use my example. So pause the video now to do that. Okay, welcome back. You should have completed the top of page 12 to get you an example of traits being passed down. So your own example that you came up with. So now we're going to move on to the independent practice. So you guys are going to create a narrative or draw a picture representing how an allele is transmitted to the next generation, giving both generations the same trait through meiosis followed by fertilization. So you have page bottoms of page 12 and the whole page of 13 to do this. You have written space here, and then you have a space for illustration. So if you want to do both, that's fine. So pause the video to start creating a narrative. So similar to what we just did before, you're just kind of making it more detailed and drawn out. So tell me a story of how an allele is being passed down. So what happens? Tell me what meiosis is. Tell me what fertilization is. Tell me the processes of both of those and how that is expressed in the offspring. So pause the video now to do that. Okay, welcome back. So by now you should have completed up until page 13 of your packet. Finally, you, as a final exercise for this week, just answer how are we passing genetic information from parent to offspring. Be sure to use the words allele, meiosis, and fertilization on page 14. So you could have done that while you were creating your narrative, but if you haven't, so pause the video to do that now. Okay, so you should be all complete with your packet. You should have answered this final question on page 14 about how genetic information is passed from parent to offspring. So welcome back. You are completed with your full packet for the week. Congratulations, I'm really impressed. That's awesome. Make sure you guys are sending these packets to me so that you are emailing me, texting me in some way so I can see where we're at, so I can see that you guys are doing this. So as always, just a little look ahead. So our video lesson is going to be posted, our next video lesson is going to be posted on Monday, March 30th, 10 a.m. as usual. And then we are going to transition from the YouTube Live into a Google Hangout, which is going to be, I think, better because I'll be able to answer your guys' questions in real time. It's like kind of like a big video chat. So you guys can pop in, pop out as you please. I'm going to post the links for that in Google Classroom. Okay, and as always, make sure you are staying in contact with me. I want to hear from you guys, emailing me those packets. Okay, have a great weekend. Bye.